Hello and welcome to another episode of the Business of Business podcast. This is Roy. We are the podcast that brings you a lot of great guests from a lot of diverse backgrounds. You know, the purpose of our show is we want to always be putting new ideas out there for, our small businesses, entrepreneurs, and solopreneurs to think about, but we also like to provide resources that can help you solve issues that you may be currently aware of. So today, this is a little bit of a different subject, but it is one that definitely needs to be talked about. We're lucky that David Moyer with Udomo, gosh, I've been practicing that and I still got it wrong, Udomo, and I'll get him to go over the meaning behind that soon. But David is a certified senior advisor and developed the caregiving toolkit that educates family members on how to start conversation with parents through end of life and beyond, so that everyone knows what to expect and can make informed, confident decisions when the time comes. The Caregiver Toolkit has 14 lessons, 80 plus videos, 30 plus assessments, and worksheets to walk family members through this journey. David and his wife experienced a well thought out plan and have seen the opposite, fighting for every morsel of help. Some of this was not knowing where to go, who to ask, or what to do. Other times they had to press past people who just saw their parents as a number and not mom or dad. Not everyone was like that. There were sympathetic people who helped as well. They are gems in, keeping this process going for us all. So first off, David, welcome to the show. And, this it's a little bit different. We usually do, more business systems, marketing, sales, but such an important topic. And I'll read, this is one of David's statistics he's provided, that 20% of employees are providing care to the elderly parents. Now, I'm going to repeat that because it's such a high number. 20% of employees are providing care to their elderly parents. So that increases stress, anxiety, while reducing overall productivity at work. So it's just something that, as a small business owner, that we need to not only be looking for changes in people's habits and work, but also look at plans where we can, help them through this process. And that's why I had asked David to be on the show, because he has an awesome, it's like a 3-stage plan that, employees could work through to really help them out. Anybody can. I mean, the business owners, this is for everybody. But, when we're a small business and have fewer employees, they're all key. And so losing productivity from one or losing them all together, can hurt our business. So we really need to pay close attention to this. So, David, thanks again for being on the show. Certainly appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Roy. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so first off, I want to let you say Udomo correctly first off, and I'm going to give up on that and let you say it correctly and then tell us the meaning behind that.
So the name is Udomo, and you got it right.
Okay.
It's a word in the Zulu language that means honor, and we use it as honoring our parents, honoring them as they age, honoring them as they get older and start losing their abilities, and giving back what they gave to us as they were raising to us, and honoring them and providing them the dignity in their old age.
Yeah, and that it's nice to live longer. We we've certainly extended the average lifespan up into the 80s, but I think what that does, it puts there's a group in the middle, and sometimes they're called the sandwich generation, because they're actually still raising kids or still have young adult children, and now they have parents that they are providing more and more care for. And even if you're not that sandwich generation, somebody like myself that, I still have a career, a full life, but my parents are getting to that age where, they are starting or fixing to need more help going forward. And it can be a real stress. It can be a real stress for the care provider. And I think I'm going to let you talk about the statistic, but a lot of times, is it like 60 to 70% of caregivers, especially for like dementia patients, can actually pass before the patient does?
Yeah, there's a lot of stress put on employees as they're managing their parents' health. And dementia is just one aspect. I mean, you have a lot of comorbidities. And that word just means there's multiple conditions.
Correct.
So you might have diabetes with COPD and congestive heart failure. So that's a comorbidity. There's a bunch of things round up in that. And then you throw COVID in the middle of it. And that stresses the body more. That's why the focus on these vaccines now is getting to the people that are over 65 that are most at risk.
Right.
And I won't get into any of what's going on there because it's just another comorbidity. It's another thing that you have to factor in.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword because you got the people that get it, but then I also hear more and more about the seniors that aren't getting out to go to the doctor when they feel like they have, heart problems or they have like a heart attack and they don't even go to the doctor because they're so worried about getting it. So, yeah, I can definitely add a whole nother layer onto what we're talking about. So, with my brief experience in this, one thing that I guess the very first thing that usually is the stumbling block is having that conversation. I mean, it's just, we don't want to think about it. We don't want to talk about it when we're together. We want to have fun and celebrate and not be, kind of a downer about all these bad things. But it's definitely a conversation that we need to have between, I guess, adult children and our parents for sure.
Yeah, and that's where everything starts, is the conversation. And the earlier that conversation is had, the better off everybody is. So if everybody's actively engaged in deciding what to do, then when that event happens, it's a lot easier to go through those things. And that conversation can happen years before any signs start showing up. And in fact, it should. Because it gets it part of the family talk period that you can have with everybody. So it's not such a big, scary conversation to have. And there's many ways you can do that. We talk about examples when something else happens to somebody else. Hey, I heard that, Aunt Mary had this issue. So, Mom, what do we do in our case when you get to that point? Let's start talking about it. Yeah. And I say, it may take 2 or 3 attempts before, the light bulb goes off and says, yeah, we need to talk about that. And statistics are another way to do that.
Yeah.
Falling statistics or concussions and things like that. It's like, okay, what would happen? What do you want us to do? Help us help you in figuring out what way to go if that happens.
Yeah, because it seems like the closer that, I'm using my parents for an example, the closer that they get to needing more and more help, the less that they really want to talk about it. So you can kind of revert back to this, like, we had this conversation about when you reach this point, these are some things that we're going to put into place. And I think that really helps kind of get the ball started rather than just setting down to have that first conversation when they are can be unwilling and not wanting to, start that conversation, because that at that point it signals to them that this may be the end of it. And it really doesn't have to be. I think that's another thing that we can reassure our parents is that what this is going to do is actually provide them a better life if we can put some things in place to help them either live at home safer, better, or if we have to, eventually put them into some kind of a senior living community, they can flourish. But anyway, so I like the way that you have your, you've got your toolkit broken down into the 3 phases, I guess. And the first one that we kind of started going down that path is that conversation, because it's not only the conversation, but then you have some assessment tools, I guess, that you can kind of find out where in that aging process that they may be, or some, I guess, trigger some ideas to think about some other additional help that they may need.
Yeah, the assessments are actually a good tool to have those conversations.
Right.
So, I mean, it starts out with simple things like what medications, list your medications. A lot of people kind of know what medications they have, but they don't consolidate them on a list.
Yeah.
So whenever you go to your doctor, the doctor will ask you what medications you on. You just hand them this list, and they check it and change it if they need.
Yeah.
And then it goes from there.
No, I was just gonna jump in and say, we've had conversations previous to this recording, and that's something that we've talked about. Is Terry had an emergency with her mother. They had to run to the hospital, and then while she's in the waiting room, she's trying to think about what are all these medications that they're on. And I think her sister brought a bag of them up there to start inventorying. So would have been an awesome thing to already have those all written down where you could just hand them off to somebody.
Yeah, and that's especially in an emergency situation. The ER docs are trying to figure out what this person already has or is taking, so they don't give them something else that affects that outcome or makes it worse.
Right.
Which is not a good situation. So that's the simple stuff.
Right.
Allergies are another one. That's the simple thing. Sometimes you have allergies to medications.
Yep.
Most allergies, you could have food allergies. So the hospital needs to know those kinds of things.
Right.
But it's also physical, how physical you are. And it gets into all the other things that you can help your parent solidify and get in one place.
Yeah.
As we go through life, we have, that file is there, that information is over there, or I think that's in the cabinet in the bathroom in the lower right, but I'm not sure. I haven't looked at it for a while. So these assessments bring all that stuff into one place.
Yeah, and you go on to talk about things like division of care, which is, that's something that's I have seen. At one point I was a volunteer long-term care ombudsman for nursing homes here where I live in Texas, and so when I very first started that journey, I thought I was going to be there to help protect, residents from the big bad nursing homes and the atrocities. I had an awakening that I was there to protect residents from their family members a lot of times. I mean, it was unbelievable the things that would happen. So kind of getting some of those things worked out on the front end, who's going to be in charge of what, when, and where. If there are multiple siblings that may be taking care, and sometimes maybe even, younger brothers or sisters want to be involved. So very important to get all that worked out.
And that's part of the front. So who's going to do what. When it gets to that point, who's going to be making the meals, who's going to be taking mom or dad to the doctor, who's going to be taking them to the hairdresser or the barber. So it's just simple things like that everybody can sit down and say, oh, I can do that, and I can do that. Yeah. And if you have siblings, you can divide that labor up so you're not the one doing it all the time, full time, in addition to trying to do your full-time job.
Right.
Because as employers, we need employees to be present and doing their job. But if they're constantly running out and, taking mom or dad to an appointment, then we've lost that time as an employer. Right. And trying to backfill that, especially the smaller the company, it's harder to backfill, and you're losing that productivity.
Yeah, and you may know the exact number, but the unpaid caregiver burden is the cost of that is crazy. But I guess the point, back for the employers is that a lot of times this burden becomes so big, people have to quit, leave their job because this is full time. I mean, it can sometimes be a 10, 12, 14-hour day depending on what
Sure.
what stage that parents may be in.
Yeah, and that's the cost that a lot of employers don't look at is the absenteeism. So that drops the productivity down.
Right.
In being present, so you can be in a meeting or being at work, but you're not in the meeting and you're not at work
Right,
because
right.
you're thinking about mom or dad. Okay, now I have to do this, and then I have to do this. So even though they're there, they may not be present.
Right.
In unexpected events.
Yeah.
Your parent falls and bang, you're out the door, and your client is hanging, so you have to backfill that, or they're taken off of the job and they're off the job site kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then you have to find a replacement, and that costs a lot of money, and that could be 30, 40, 50% of the employee's salary to replace that, because you have the advertising to do, you have the vetting to do, you have the training period, you have all of those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And you also lose that institutional knowledge that person walks away with.
Right.
And, you have to hire somebody temporary while you go in there. So the EAP, the Employee Assistance Program, helps alleviate that to the extent that it can,
right.
and remove that stress, because, for example, the division of care allows the employee to divide that up across their family, aunts and uncles, or in-home care when it gets to that point.
Right. The the other couple other things in this particular packet is the remote caregiving. Of course, a lot of families are scattered out. Again, I'll use Terry's family as an example. They have a sister, in California. There's two here, and she's in California. But they scheduled with her a time to come out. That division of labor, but also, they gave her some projects that she can work on from, remotely, where she doesn't actually have to be there with hands-on. So it's been a blessing for them that it's not, it doesn't fall to one. They've all three been able to take a equal role in, providing care for her mother.
Right. And I included that because we were in that exact situation. We're on the East Coast and my wife's parents were on the West Coast. So, flying back and forth.
Right.
Now, I had frequent flyer miles that I could cash in, which was a real big help. But going back and forth is expensive. And, I was spending my vacation my time off in those situations where we're helping her parents out, and, slipping in a day or two of fun, but we're mostly doing that.
Yeah.
And so when I come back from vacation, I'm not rested to go back to work.
Right.
It's like, I need a vacation from my vacation kind of
thing. Exactly.
And the remote care also has you set up thresholds on when to go. At first we were going every time, but then we said, okay, we need to set up reasons to travel. Even if it's 3 hours away, it's 3 hours there, 3 hours with your parent, or 4 hours, or staying overnight, and then 3 hours back.
Right.
You set up a threshold. You say, okay, I'm not going to travel if it's just an appointment. I will travel if it's an ER and I can talk to the nurse or doctor and they say it's time to get here, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you set those thresholds up and work those out with your family ahead of time.
Yeah, which really kind of steps into the next thing is caring for yourself, because in the caregiving world, if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anybody else. So that's definitely important to keep that on your radar as well.
And that's where the burnout comes from. If you're using your vacation or holiday to spend time doing that, then you're not resting. You're not using what vacation you have to rest. I spent a lot of time in Europe, and they have 6 weeks vacation And I was lucky at one point to have that in my working life, but they totally unplugged, which is, what Americans don't do.
Right.
They don't answer their phones. They don't answer their emails. They don't, when they're out on holiday, they call it holiday. When they're on holiday, you can't reach them.
Right. Right.
And we need to get that into our lives.
Yeah. Right.
But because that's what it's for. That's what the vacation is for, is to unplug, unwind, recharge, take your family on vacations and have fun and, enjoy that. But if you're not caring for yourself, you cannot care for other people.
Yeah, if we would probably do that at a younger age, we may not need so much care, so much care so early. If we would learn how to relax just a little bit
That's
and
right.
enjoy life.
Yeah, that's right.
So wrapping up this first packet, the next thing is of course, the estate planning, the documents, and then it says that
Right.
you include 25 worksheets just in this one. Starting the conversation packet, but the estate planning again, an important thing so it doesn't cause issues at that time is who's going to be your power of attorney, your medical,
Right.
financial, just working out all those kinds of issues.
Yeah, and it's a plan. It's an estate plan. So if you don't think you have an estate, you do. I
Right.
mean, you own a house or partially own a house, or you own cars, you may own boats, you may own, snowmobiles or a country home, a cabin somewhere. You have an estate.
Right.
If you have money in the bank, you have an estate. If you have CDs or any kind of investments, you have an estate.
Right.
So what do you want done with that when you get old? And what do your parents want done? A lot of parents have been saving their entire lives. I mean, we're talking about the boomer generation here
Right.
that have gone through the depression and scrimp and save every penny for the most part. So they have something that they own. So you help them figure out what they want to do with that before the time comes where you can't figure that out and you're on your own.
Yeah. And that is working with the senior living communities and working with some of their marketing departments. That's one of the major things that when people come in, why they don't want to do senior living is because they want to be sure and leave a legacy to their family. So it's very important to get that worked out, what that's going to look like in the end. And this is way off in a rabbit hole that don't want to go down and just make mention is that even if you do have sizable estates, I think if you start this process early enough, there are legal and prudent ways that you can protect the
Right.
seniors' income and assets going forward. So that's really all I want to say
Right.
about that. You need to seek out a lawyer, CPA, seek out all the professional advice to make sure that because there's a time horizon that needs to be thought about as
Right.
well. Usually about a 5-year look back period. So
That's right.
if you can get in that range, it's good to seek out legal professional help, legal and financial, to make sure that you get that set up correctly where it doesn't come back to bite you.
Yeah, you want those done before that 5-year
Yeah.
clawback is what they call it.
Yeah.
So, and trusts are a good way to do that. Trusts are untouchable for the most part.
Yeah.
You can set assets into a trust and then they can't be touched.
Right.
So that's a really good way to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So the next one is called the aging in place and the move. And so again, another huge decision that I've seen both. I see people that, like my grandmother, went to an independent living community, not unwillingly, but just with a little bit of persuasion, she went and flourished. I mean, her social life
Right.
sparked back up, and it was awesome for her. And then there's some that are like, you know what, I'm not leaving this house for any reason. And so, we kind of have to evaluate what they want and then what we can work with. If we can get the house fixed up where we can have it trip and fall proof or whatever, safety
Right.
from the outside, whatever. But anyway, I'll let you talk a little bit more about what's in this middle packet.
Right, and that's a lot of people, a majority of people in the 90% range, age in place, age in their own home. So what do we have to do to keep them there? And that's part of the assessments and the plans that you build out. So you can actually, there's a specialist that you can hire called certified aging in place specialists that will come in and take a look at your home and walk through the entire home and say, okay, here are the things that you have to be very careful with. Here are the things that should be removed immediately. Tripping hazards and things like that.
Right.
And add some light here, because as you age, your vision gets dimmer. So add light here so you can see this. And stairs, obviously, stairs are a big thing when you get older.
Yeah.
But that the assessments help you walk through that, and the certified aging in place helps you walk through that. And then if you decide to stay in place, then you can do some modifications to the house.
Right.
And if you get to the point where they need to be in an independent, or they want to be in an independent retirement community, continuous care retirement community, one of those, there's an assessment there on how to evaluate the community. So I say use your senses. What's the first thing you do when you walk into a facility? You look, you smell, sit down and have a meal that the residents are going to have. You hear what's going on, and you use your sense of touch. So use your five senses. Pretend that you're going to be living there.
Yeah.
Would you like to live there? So there's a lot of those evaluations that go on in determining which way to go, aging in place, or in a facility or a home. And some of these are group homes. Group homes are starting to be a big thing, where you have multiple people in a home instead of in a facility.
Right.
And they take care of themselves, and then they chip in for nurses or in-home care, and that's all part of the rent, essentially, that they pay every month.
Yeah, and there
a lot
are
of options.
There are some they call them pods, but even aging at home, they try to group people in the same neighborhood, and they may have a nurse or caregiver, right, things that come and do some delivery. So that's another thing to check out, in your area as well, to see if those, and I don't know what they're called. I just know it's some kind of a pod, but those are great things. And I've mystery shopped hundreds of communities, and so my advice on this is to make this decision with a lot of thought and care, because once you get to the age where you are having to move, sometimes change is the very worst thing for our parents.
Right.
It's very stressful, and so the worst thing we can do is move them into a place that's not a good fit, and then have to move them. And I just recommend multiple visits. Sometimes you want to set an appointment, but you also want to go by unannounced and see, kind of what's going on. But when you make that decision, I would go to that. I'd go back before, you make the move, and go at different times of the day, morning, noon, and, afternoon, just to see if there's consistency, across the day. And because a lot of times, if they know you're coming and you have an appointment, they will make sure everything is tip top for you to come in. So
right.
Just be very careful with that, making that decision. Don't make it too hastily, if at all possible.
And some of the independent facilities allow you to stay a couple nights.
Yeah.
In an apartment or something like that. So you get a feel for it, or your parents can get a feel for it.
Right.
And, try it out. Try before you buy, kind of thing.
Right. All right. Well, so let's move on to the third and final module, is the last days and arrangements. And oh my gosh, this is a difficult conversation going both ways. I mean, as a child, we don't want to think of our parents' end of life for sure.
Right.
And then even if the parent, like myself, I've had this conversation with my children, and I get the, hands over the ears, we're not talking about this stuff, and screaming and running. It's like,
right.
Well, we have to. And I think it's better, like I'm in good health and not planning on going anywhere in the next week or two. And so I think we can talk about it a lot easier and more jovial than, if it's somebody's final days. It makes that conversation that much more difficult.
Yeah, and it also allows you to have that conversation on things that you never knew about your parent.
Right.
That, my so my parents, I think I said this before, my dad is full German, my mom is full Italian, so I've lived a conflicted life. So my dad didn't want to have any conversations on any of this, and my mom said, "Yeah, bring it on. We want to talk about this stuff. Let's talk." And with the hands and everything waving, and let's do this. So, my mom said, "I even want to write my obituary, so let's sit down and write it." And here's one of the things that we started with. She's had a full life, but her obituary was facts and figures. No. And I said, "Yeah, Mom, let's, after putting this together," I said, "Well, let's talk about you. What do you have? What were your delights? What did you really do in really love in life?" And it changed it all around. And it also allowed me to find out things about my mom that I never knew.
Yeah.
She when she was 3 years old, her brother needed to go somewhere, and her mom said, "No, you're not going. You have to babysit your sister." So he said, "I'll just take her with her." So at 3 years old, he threw her on the gas tank of his motorcycle, and off they went.
Oh, wow.
So I never knew that, and she's 90, she turns 94 this year.
Wow.
So it's things like that, and you can have these conversations. And she has Alzheimer's now, so the conversations that you have are different.
Right.
And I have these in this section where you say, go through the firsts, have those firsts conversation. I said, so what was your first memory that you can recall? And Alzheimer's really messes up your short-term memory, but long-term, it's still there. So when you take them back to their childhood, that's how she remembered the 3-year-old motorcycle on the tank, holding on to the handlebars, screaming her lungs out kind of thing. And you take her back, and it's things like, every day when her dad came home from work, he gave her an apple. And that was one of the first memories that she had. That was 3 or 4 years old. So because she's in a facility and she couldn't get out, I've been bringing her apples and oranges, and it just, she lights up when she sees it. Yeah. Would have never known that if I didn't have that conversation.
Right. Yeah, it's always good to have those conversations, and those little details that come out. Even still, at our age, we still find out new and different things every time we have an in-depth conversation. So, the other thing in this last packet is the final arrangements. There are so many options. Traditional cremation. Anyway, you can go 1,000 ways on that. It's all. I guess it's good to, if you talk about this early enough, you can get pre-arrangements in place, because I'm telling you, we never talked about it, but when my grandmother passed, it was a stressful time, and she was a big constant in mine and my kids' life, and so me and Mom were trying to plan, when we were devastated, and it's not. Sometimes you don't make the best financial decisions at that point. Right. So if you can get out there and pre-plan before all the emotions are there, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, you don't want to be staring at the funeral director's face trying to make those decisions in that moment of extreme stress.
Right.
It's, sit down and talk about these things. Like you said, there's multiple ways to handle this. A lot of people still like the traditional embalming and casket and viewing and all of those kinds of things, and those are important for people. Understand what is important to your mom or dad,
right,
and honor them in those important details. Some of them say, cremate me and spread my ashes at the golf course or in our backyard, or
Right.
compact them and compress them and shoot me into space, or I want to be part of this ocean reef kind of thing. And now there's a big move for green burials,
Right.
where there are cemeteries that allow the body to decompose naturally. And, so you have a lot of those options, and it's not, don't get stuck. So walk through those before, and it'll make it easier for everybody. It's, you walk in with okay, this is what she wanted. Everybody agrees, and she agreed.
Yeah.
So, or he agreed.
Yeah, and that's important fact too, is that it's good to get, it gives you peace of mind that you're doing what your parent wanted, but also
Exactly.
when there's multiple siblings involved, sometimes each person has their own view of what they thought mom or dad really wanted, and instead of let's talk this out so we actually know what they want and we can all know what they said or put in writing. So anyway, never too early, to sit down and have these conversations and get these plans in place. I think this is an awesome toolkit that you've put together. And, like we said, we're talking about it to give, smaller businesses, employers, the opportunity to realize that it's a big impact on their business, and I feel like for the next 5 or 6, maybe 10 years, it's just going to grow in the size of people that it impacts.
There are 10,000 people a day that turn 65. Wow. Right now, there's about 50 million of them, and that'll go up to 80 million by 2030.
Right.
So that's a lot of people, and that's a lot of children that need to figure out what's going on with their parents. Yeah. And the last part of this end stage is, I call it, but wait, there's more. Because if your parent owns a business, you've got to shut that business down or sell it off or work with the partners to figure out how to have them buy out. There's a very you have to talk to your parents about how you want them to do that, or do they want you to take over the business, or one of the siblings? So it's get all that discussed beforehand, so you know what's going on. So you're not going, okay, what do I do? I don't want this business. I know nothing about it. Right. So how do they plan shutting that down or turning it over or selling it or something like that? That's an important part of closing down a person's life. And it's, selling the house, selling the goods in the house if they stayed there their entire life and did age in place completely. So there's a lot of tools in there to help you figure that out and determine ahead of time what to do.
Yeah. All right. Well, great. Well, David, thanks so much for taking time out of your day, to be with us and spread this message. I think, like I said, this is very powerful, but it's also, you've got it laid out great where we can, walk through these different things that we need to get completed. So how can people reach out and get a hold of you?
So the website is Udomo, udumo.co. And you'll see those 3 toolkits there where, depending on the stage of your life, that's why I split them into 3. You can use individually, or you can buy the complete toolkit. And it takes about a week or 2 to go through the course itself. And then it's kind of like a lifetime of working with your parents and your siblings or aunts and uncles and those things to get it set up. So it's pretty quick to go through, but I think you can pretty much have this done in about 3 to 6 months. The legal pieces may take a little longer, depending on how large an estate is. Right. And lawyers tend to work slower to get things right. But you have all that in place, so it's done. So it's pretty quick and it's pretty concerted. And for an employer to offer this as an employee assistance program, it kind of shows them that they know their employees are struggling with this or will be struggling with this, right? And can understand it. And the The website again is udomo.co/EAP for the Employee Assistance Program, and that page will explain it, and all the contact information is on there.
Okay.
It's udomo.co/EAP.
Okay. Awesome. Well, reach out to David if this is for yourself, or if this is something that you can use at your company, or for your an employee or from some employees. Be great to get this in place to help them out, and probably even lessen the impact of these issues on the business itself. From having to lose employees or having that reduced productivity. This is a great way to be proactive and reach out and help them, and they will be appreciative of it, I guarantee you. The stress of waiting till the very last minute to handle these is it's unbelievable, and can really make you out of sorts because of all the stress over these discussions and getting plans in place. So anyway, that's going to do it for us today for this episode of the Business of Business podcast. You can always find us at www.thebusinessofbusinesspodcast.com. We are on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and this video will go up on YouTube as well when we're through. So until next time, take care of yourself and take care of each other. David, thanks again.
Thanks, Roy. Thanks for having me on.